Hey there, how's it going everybody? In this video, we'll be learning how to use templates to return more complex HTML code than we did in the last video, and we'll also see how to pass variables to our templates as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm starting within the views module of the blog app that we created in the last video, where we were returning HTTP responses from our home route and our about route. So we can see in our two routes that we are returning these two headings, but most HTML files have a lot more HTML than this. They usually contain an entire structure with a head tag, a body tag, and all of that. Now, there's nothing stopping us from returning all of that HTML here in this response. So, we could do something like doc type and then type out the entire HTML document here. But we would have to do that for every single one of our views, and we can already see how that would get extremely ugly. So we'd have to create a ton of repeated HTML like this for every single view that we have. So the best way to do this is to use templates. So to use templates, we first need to create a templates directory within our blog app directory. And I'll just do that here within Sublime Text. So within the blog app directory, I'm going to create a new folder. And within that blog app, I'm going to create a directory called templates. So by default, Django looks for a templates subdirectory in each of our installed apps. Now, we haven't gone over installed apps just yet, but we'll look at those right after we make these templates. So since Django is possibly going to be looking in other locations for additional templates, we're going to want to create another subdirectory within our templates directory with the same name as our app so that we know that these are the templates specific to this blog application. Now, that may sound a bit redundant to make another directory in here with the same name as our current app, but that's just the Django convention. So I'll do that by going into our templates directory here. And within our templates directory, we're going to create a new folder and call this blog. So the way that this should currently look is we have our blog app, and within our blog app, we have a templates directory, and within that templates directory, we have another directory called blog. And this is where our templates.html files are going to live. So let me get rid of that. So now within the blog directory, inside of the templates directory, let's create both of our templates. So I'll create a template for our home page and for our about page. So I'll say new file, and we'll say home.html for the first one. And I will also create another file called about.html for the second one. Okay, so first let's do our home route and our home template. So I'll put all of the HTML that we'd like within our home page within this template. So in Sublime Text, if I type HTML and then hit tab, then it creates a minimal HTML page structure for us. Now, if your editor doesn't create a structure like this, then you can find these pages on my GitHub code, and I'll have a link to that in the description section below if you'd like to copy and paste from there. So now that we have a basic HTML structure, let's add the heading tag that we had in our Python script into this home template. So within the body, I'll create an H1 tag and just say, let's see, we called this blog home, and I'll put an exclamation point there as well. Okay, so now that we have this template ready, we have to add our blog application to our list of installed apps so that Django knows to look there for a templates directory. Now, to add our application to that list, it's recommended that we add our app configuration to our project's settings.py module. Now, our app configuration is located inside of our apps.py module within our application. So within our blog application, we should have an apps.py module. So I'll open that up, and we can see here that we have a blog config, and that inherits from this app config class here. So I'm going to copy this blog config name and copy that. And now let's open up our project's settings.py file where we need to add the path to this class within the installed apps list. So within our project, mine is called Django project, let's open the settings.py file. And now let's scroll down until we see installed apps. And here at the top is where I want to add a path to that app configuration. And this is going to be a string. So let's create a string. And then this is going to be blog.apps. And then paste in that blog config. So blog.apps.blog config. And let's not forget the comma afterwards here, since this installed apps is a list. And you should just get used to adding applications to this list anytime you create a new application, because it's something that's easy to forget, but you'll need to do that in order for Django to correctly search your templates. And also when we start working with databases soon, it's also where Django looks for our models. Okay, so now let's use that template that we created so that it renders that whenever we navigate to our homepage. So in order to do that, we have to point our blog views to use those templates. So I'm going to open up our blog views. So within blog, I will open up our views. Now there are a couple of different ways of loading in a template. Now, one way would be to load the template in and then render it and pass that to our HTTP response. But that way is a few more steps than what it needs to be. And Django actually provides a shortcut that does all of this in just one piece of code. And that shortcut is in the Django Shortcuts module. And this is so commonly used that Django actually already added this import for us when we created our app. So we can see the very first line here was already here when we first looked in this file. And it's from Django Shortcuts import render. Now, if you don't have that import in your views, or if you removed it for any reason, then you can just type that back in as it looks here. And now we can return a rendered template instead of our HTTP response. So after our return statement here, right within our home view, I will say return render, and the render function takes the request object as its first argument. So we'll pass in request, and the second argument it takes is the template name that we want to render. Now, the way we reference our templates is by first specifying the subdirectory within our templates directory. In this case, it's blog, and this is going to be a string. So we'll say a string of blog / and then followed by the name of our template. And we want to render our home.html template for this home view. So we'll say blog / home.html and save that. And there's also a third optional argument that we can pass in that we'll look at here in just a second. And that's the context. So basically it's a way for us to pass information into our template. And we'll take a look at passing information into our template in just a second. But for now, let's make sure that this works so far. Now, this render function still returns an HTTP response in the background. So that is still what our view is returning. Our views always need to return either an HTTP response or an exception. Okay, so let's make sure this works. So I'm going to pull up my terminal and make sure that our dev server is running, and it's not. So I'll say Python manage.py run server. And now let's open that up in our browser. And now we can see that this says blog home here. So it still looks about the same as it did before. But if I view the source code of this web page, and let me make this a little larger here, then we can see that now we have our entire HTML structure that we put inside of our template. So that is using that new home template that we just created. Okay, so now let's do this same thing for our about page. So let's go into our blog application and open our templates. So I'll open this back up here. And we want to open up the template for that about page. So it's in our blog app, templates directory, blog subdirectory within templates, and then about. And within here, let's copy most of the structure from our home.html template and then paste it into our about page. So I'm going to copy everything from our home template and paste that in to our about template. And instead of blog home, we'll just say blog about. Actually, let me just change that to say about page. So that'll work. Okay, so at this point, we don't need to add our application to the installed apps again like we did last time, because that's already been done for our whole blog app. So now we just need to update our about view to render this new template. So let's open back up our views, and instead of returning this simple HTTP response, let's instead render our about template. So I'll just copy this from our home view and paste it in here to our about view. And instead of rendering that home.html, we will render the about.html. And now if we look at our views, they're both now returning these rendered templates instead of using our HTTP response. So we can just remove that import since it's no longer being used. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so now let's test that our about template is working well. So let's open that up in the browser here and go to our home page /about. We can see that now we have this about page. If we look at the page source, then we can see that we have that whole HTML structure. So at this point, if you were just using Django to create static HTML pages, then that's basically what we've created here. All you need to do is add in more detailed HTML and CSS, and you'd be good to go. But pretty much every web application these days doesn't just contain static information. You normally have posts and updates and all kinds of different information that's continuously being added to the site. So for example, if you remember the application that I showed in the first video that I said would be our final application at the end of this series, it had a lot of different posts by different authors, and those could be blog posts or pictures or whatever it is that you're making with this application. So let's say that we have some posts like this that we wanted to display in our templates. So how would we do that? So let's open back up our application and add some dummy data so that we can see how this is done. So I'm going to add this dummy data into our blog views, and then we'll see how to pass that into our templates. And I'll just add this dummy data here to the top of our views file, and we will just create some fake posts. So I'll call this post, and this is going to be a list. And this list is going to be a list of dictionaries. And each dictionary will be information associated with one post. So this will be our first post. So we'll have an author. And I'll say that the author is Corey MS. The title, we'll have a title to a post. So we'll have the title be blog post 1. And we will have some content. So I'll put in a content key here. And for the content of this post, we'll just say first post content. And then lastly, we have a date posted. Now, this is normally going to be a datetime object, but we'll just pass in a string. So I'll just say August 27th of 2018. So now let's copy this. So that's enough information for one dummy post there. Now I'll put in a comma here and paste in another dictionary, and this will be like another post here. So for the second post for the author, I'll just say Jane Doe, and then we'll have the title be blog post 2. The content can be second post content, and for the date posted, we'll do August 28th for this one. So let's just pretend for now that we made a database call and got back this list of posts, and we want to display these posts on our blog homepage. So we can pass these posts into our template just by passing an argument with our data, and we'll put our data into a dictionary. So within our home page view here, let's create a dictionary, and we'll call this dictionary context, and I will set that equal to a dictionary. And now within this context dictionary, I'm going to create a key, and that key is going to be called post. And the value that I'm going to assign to our post key is our list of posts that we created at the top of the file. So I will pass in that post dictionary that we created at the top. And now we can pass that context in as our third argument to our render function. And so if I come down here, then we can pass in context as our third argument. And by doing that, it will pass that data into our template and let us access it there within the template. So now whatever key name that we use in this dictionary that we passed in will be accessible from within the template, and it will be equal to that value. So we will have access to this post variable here, and it will be equal to this post data, which is a list of dictionaries containing information of each post. So now let's switch over to our home.html template so we can see how to use this. And now in our home template, we need to loop through those posts in order to display them on our homepage. So the templating engine that Django uses is very similar to Jinja 2, if any of you have used that. And the templating engine allows us to write code here within our templates. So to write a for loop, we can open up a code block. So I'm just going to get rid of this H1 tag here. And we can open up a code block by doing these curly braces and then these %signs. And now we can say for post in post. And this post variable that we are looping over here is the key of the context dictionary that we passed in. So now we always need to end our loops within our templates. So we can say end for. So it's kind of similar to writing Python in our templates, but it's not exactly the same because we have to tell our template whenever certain loops end. So for each if statement, you have to have an end if. For loops, you have to have end for, and so on. So now within this for loop, Now we can print out our post information one post at a time. So we can say, I will just have an H1 here for the post title. And now if we want to access a variable, then we can use a double curly brace like this. And then if we say post.title, then that will put the title of the post inside of this H1 tag. So again, this is similar to Python, but it's not exactly the same because we can actually use a dot syntax here on a dictionary, and that's how we actually get the title. So it's not like Python where we would do a .get or something like that. We can just say post.title. And again, to access a variable, we use these double curly braces. And to do more logic, like if statements and for loops, we use this kind of code block here, which is curly braces and percent signs. And if this confuses you for now, then you're definitely going to be able to get this by the end of the series because we're going to be using logic like this a lot. Okay, so now let's do a paragraph tag. And here we'll print out the post author and also the date that it was posted. So I'll say by, and then our double curly braces to access a variable, post.author, and then we'll say on, and then do the post date. So we'll say post dot, and I believe I called that date underscore posted. Let me be sure it's right there. Okay, yeah, date underscore posted. And now let's go to another paragraph tag. And now we will just print out the content of the post. So within these double curly braces, we can say post dot content and save that. Okay, so now if we save that and reload the page in our browser, first let me make sure that our development server is still running and that we don't have any errors. And if it says that it's running, then likely you don't have any syntax errors, so that's good. Now let's reload this page in our browser. So I'll close down the source code there and then reload our home page. And we can see now on our home page that it looped over our dummy data and displayed that information that we specified within the HTML. So if we view this source code here, oops, I accidentally hit inspect. If I go to view page source, let me make this a little larger here, then we can see that both of those sections that were created within the for loop are both printed out here. Now let's go over that one more time just so it's 100% clear. So just a quick recap. In our blog views, we created some dummy data here at the top, which is a list of dictionaries that has 2 dummy posts with that information. Within our home view, we have this context, which is a dictionary. And the keys of this context is what is going to be accessible from within our template. So this post variable is going to be accessible inside our template with this value equal to post, which is a list of dictionaries. So once we pass that into our template, then we'll have access to that. So within our home template, we can loop over those posts that we have access to and then print them all out one by one. So even though we only have one section here, since there are 2 posts, it prints out this section twice. And that is why in our actual application in the browser, we get 2 blog posts here with different content. And whenever we actually look at our page, then it comes out like this. Okay, so now let's add some more to our templates. So I'm going to bring back up our home.html template. Now we saw how to do a for loop, but we can also do if and else conditionals. So let's say that we wanted to be able to pass a title to our web pages, but if we didn't pass a title, then we would just use a default of Django blog or something like that. So we could come up here into the title section or the head section where we're printing the title. And to do an if else statement, we can put in our curly braces with percent signs here and say if title. So if we have a specific title, then we will put that there. And if we don't have a title, then we'll put in these curly braces and percent signs and say else, and then put another title here if we don't have a title. And then at the end here, let me remove that curly brace. And then at the end here, we need to end our if statement. So we'll say end if. Okay, so if we have a title passed in to our context data into this template, then we will call this Django blog, then dash, and then print out that title. So to access that title variable, then we use the double curly braces and just print out title. Now, if we don't have a title, then we'll just print out Django blog without anything else. And let's also do this in our about template also. So I'm going to copy this top section here with the if-else statement. And within our about template, up in our head, I'm going to replace our title with this conditional. And now let's go back to our views and give one of our views a title and not provide one for the other. So let's not pass in a title for our home page and just let that use the default. But for our about page, let's pass in a title of about. Now we don't actually have to create the context by itself here. If it's short enough, then we can just simply pass in a dictionary directly in as this argument. So we can just say title, and then the value for that title will say about, and save that. So now with that saved, if we reload our browser, now this might be a little small for you to see, but up here in the tab, we have a title of Django blog, and that is because we didn't pass in a title and it uses the default from that conditional. Now if we go to the about page, so /about, now up here in the top, it's kind of small, but it says Django blog -about. So it's actually using that title from the conditional. Okay, so we're almost finished up with this tutorial, but there is one thing about our templates that isn't very good design right now. So if you notice, our homepage template and our about page template have a lot of similar repeated code. And that is never good in programming because it means if we want to update one of those sections, then we would need to update it in every location. So for example, if we wanted to change our default title for our website, then we would have to make that change in both the home and about templates. And the more pages that we have with repeated code, the worse that problem would be. So it would be better to have everything that is repeated in a single place so that there is only one place to make changes, and our home template and about template only contains the information that is unique to those pages. So to accomplish this, we can use something called template inheritance. So let's see what this looks like. So let me create a new template in our templates directory. So let me open up our project here. And within our blog templates, let's create a new template. So I'll say new file, and we'll call this base.html. And within base.html, we want to pick out all of the repeated sections between our home and our about templates. So if we compare these, so I'll switch back and forth between the home and about templates here. So we can see there's a lot of repeated code. The only thing that isn't repeated is this little section down here in our body. So as a starting place for our base template, I'm going to grab the code from our about template here and copy that, and let's paste that into our base template. And now let's delete the part that is unique to the about page, and that is just this h1 tag in here. So if I delete that, now all we're left with here is the HTML that is shared between both of our views, our home view and our about view. So now in this location, I'm going to create a block, and a block is a section that child templates can override. And we'll see this in action in just one second. So I'll create a block within our body tag, and I'll just call this content. And we create blocks with those curly braces and the % signs, and I'll call this block content. And then right on the other side of this block, we will create another section that says end block, and save that. So now within our home and about templates, we'll inherit this base template and get all of this information, and then we'll just override the content section with the stuff that is unique to each page. So first let me switch over to the home view, and in this home template, we want to use that base template as the parent. So we can get rid of all the information that is in that base template. So first let me remove all of the information that is in our base template. So that would be everything up here at the top, and also the ending body tag here and the ending HTML tag. So this for loop is the only thing that was unique to our home template. And now at the top of this template, we can use the base template by extending it. So up here at the top, we'll put in curly braces and % signs, and we'll say extends. And then within a string here, we want to extend the base template within this blog directory. So that is blog/base.html. Now remember, in our base template, we have this block here called content, and we want our for loop in our home template to override that content section. So to do that, we can wrap it in a content block by saying double curly braces here, or I'm sorry, curly braces with % signs, and say block content, and then indent that whole for loop inside of that block content. And then after the content block, we can close that out with curly braces, %, and say end block. And I will put content after there so we know that we're ending that content block. Now you could simply just use end block there instead of saying end block content, but I like doing it that way because if you have multiple blocks, then it can be easy to lose track of what blocks you're closing. So I just like to be explicit and specify exactly what block is ending there. Okay, so now let's do this exact same thing in our about template. So I'm just going to copy everything here from the home template, and then I will paste it in to our about page, but I will leave the information that's currently there in our about page, but just space down a couple lines. Okay, so on our about page, instead of our content being this for loop here, it's just this H1 tag with the text of about page. So let's copy that and let's paste that in to the content block up here at the top. And now we can just remove what our old about template was. So I can get rid of that. And now we can see that this is all that we're left with. So we can see that we have a lot less code in both our home template and our about template, and both of them are using this base.html template. So if you wanted to now change the default title up here, then we could change that to whatever we wanted, and the home and the about template should both pick those up. So now with those changes, let's make sure this is still working in the browser. And after we save this, then we should be able to reload it in the browser and still have the same pages that we had before. So this is saved, and I'm going to go back to our home page here. We can see that the home page is still working, so that's good. And we can go to the about page, and that's still working as well. So both of these pages are still working, but now we're using template inheritance. So let me show you why this is so powerful. So let's say that we wanted to now update our entire website to use Bootstrap. Now, if you don't know what Bootstrap is, basically it's an extremely popular library that makes it easy to add some nice styles to your website. And I'll be using Bootstrap in this series since it will allow us to add some nice styles easily without taking any of the focus away from Django. So to add Bootstrap to our website, I'm going to open up the start template from the Bootstrap documentation to see how they say to do this. And I've already got this open up in my browser here. And I'll have a link to this page in the description section below. So this is the Bootstrap starter template that we can use in order to get Bootstrap into our website. So this is an entire HTML document here. And we can see that we need to add a few things. So we have some required meta tags here in the head. There is some CSS here in the head that links to the Bootstrap CSS. And also down here before the closing body tag, there are 3 JavaScript scripts. Now, the CSS and the JavaScript that this is using are all served from a content delivery network. And basically, that just means that there's nothing that we actually need to download. So we should just be able to drop this starter template into our site and we'll be good to go. Now, there are actually some third-party packages that some people use in order to use Bootstrap and Django together, and I won't be using anything like that in this series because I feel like it's something additional to learn, and if you're already familiar with Bootstrap classes, then there's really no reason you can't just use it directly. It just takes adding these few lines here to our base template, and we should be good to go. And I also feel like it gives us a little bit more control with the design just to do it manually like this. Now, if we weren't using template inheritance, then we'd have to make these changes to every template in our application. And not only would that be easy to screw up, but it would be almost impossible to maintain once the number of pages on our website grew. But now that we have that base template, we just need to make these changes to that single template that our other templates inherit from. So first, let's copy these meta tags and the CSS that needs to be added to the head of our page. So I'm just going to, everything within the head here, I'm just going to copy from there down. So from the beginning head tag down to the end, everything inside there, I will copy that. And let's go to our base template. And let's paste this into the head of our current base template. And I'm going to paste all of that above the title. So now we have those meta tags and the link to the CSS. And it looks like I copied their title tag too. So let's actually just get rid of that and use our title tag. So now we just have the meta tags and the CSS. And now let's go back to that starter template and let's grab the JavaScript here before the closing body tag. So I will copy all of that, go back to our base template, and right before the closing body tag in our template, I will paste those scripts in. And just with those couple of changes, we should now be able to use Bootstrap specific CSS classes. So to use one of those, I'm going to wrap our content in a div with the class of container, which will give the content some good padding and spacing. So before the content block, I will make a div here. Actually, let me move this content block into this div. So I'll paste that in there. And we want this div to have a Bootstrap class, and that Bootstrap class is going to be called container. And again, that will just give our content some good padding and spacing. So simply adding in that CSS and JavaScript should be enough for our web application to now be using Bootstrap. So now let's make sure all of this is still working. So if I look at the terminal, then it looks like our server is still running. So that's good. We don't have any errors. Now, if I pull this up in the browser and reload our homepage, then we can see that now we have some padding and some margin changes. So the content used to be really far over here to the left, and now it's more towards the center of the page. And if we go to the About page, then we can see that Bootstrap is working on that page too. And it worked on both of those pages because both templates are inheriting that single base template. Okay, so I know that that was probably a lot to take in. So let's do a quick recap before moving on to the next topic. So what we did here is we created a base template called base.html, and this is our parent template that other templates will inherit from. And this is the main structure of our HTML that is going to be included on every single page. Now, you can have multiple blocks, but right now we only have a single block called content, and that content block is what our other templates can override. And when they override that content block with data, it will place that data at this location in the HTML. So it'll place it within this container div here. So now if we open our home template, then we can see that we are extending that base template. And then we are specifying that we want to put some information into that content block. And the information that we are putting there is that dummy post data that we've seen before. So when it's all said and done, if we go back to the home page and look at our page source here, and let me make this larger so everyone can see, then we can see that we have all of that information from the base template, including the Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript. And then we have our two dummy blog posts here where that content block is located inside of that div with the class of container. Okay, so now that we have this base layout template in place, let's add a navigation bar and some global styles to our website so that it looks a lot nicer and similar to our final product. Now, this is a good bit of HTML, so I'm going to grab this code from some code snippets so you don't have to watch me type all of this out. But the link to these code snippets will be in the description section below, so you can grab these snippets as well. Now, really, you could follow along with this series just fine without styling the website, but having these in place will give a better idea for how this might actually look in a real application. So the first snippet I'm going to grab is in my snippets folder, and I have my snippets folder open here in Finder. And this is within navigation.html. So I'm going to open this in Sublime Text. So this is the first snippet that I'm going to grab. So let's copy all of this and then go back to our base.html template. And we are going to paste this to the very top of our body because this is a navigation bar. So I will paste that in and then fix the indentations there and save that. So what we added here is a navigation bar with some Bootstrap CSS classes that will make this look nice. And I'm also going to put in a new main section that contains our content block. And this snippet is in our snippets folder, and it is called main.html. So I'm going to open up the snippets folder and open up main.html and copy this whole section that I have here, and then go back to our base template. And within our base template, I'm going to scroll down to our old container div that contained our content block. And this is going to be a replacement for that. So let's get rid of that old div that contained our content block and then paste in our new main section here. And let me clean up the indentation there as well. Now, if you're following along with pasting in these snippets, then don't forget to remove that old container div that had our old block content because our snippet that we just pasted in has block content listed right here. Okay, and I also have a few custom styles that aren't Bootstrap specific, and those are going to be in a file called main.css. Now, since this will be a CSS file in our actual project, we need to actually put it somewhere. And in Django, static files like CSS and JavaScript need to be located in a static directory within our app. So let's create a directory in our project called static. So within our blog app, I'm going to right click on that blog directory and create a new folder. And I'm going to call that folder static. So that static directory lives in the root directory of our blog app. Now, just like with our templates, we'll want to create another subdirectory with the same name of our app inside of our static directory. So I'll create another directory inside the static directory called blog. So I'll right click on the static directory, say new folder, and we will call this blog. And then within that blog directory inside of our static directory, I'll create a CSS file and I will call this main.css. And within main.css, I'm going to grab another snippet of code in my snippets folder. So let me open that. And this snippets file is called main.css. So I will open that and I will copy all of that and then paste this into our blog main CSS that we just created. So I will paste all of that in there and save that. Okay, so now we have a CSS file, and in order to include that in our base template, we're going to need to include a couple of lines. So let's go back to our base template, and we want to put our main.css file in this template. So probably right above this title here is where we'll include that main.css file that's within that static folder. But first, we have to load our static files. So to do this, we need to open up a code block, and I will do this at the very top of our template. So right above the doc type here at the top, I'll put in a code block with the curly braces and percent signs, and we'll say load static. And that will make it so that we can load in that CSS file from our static directory. And now we can add our CSS file. And again, I'm going to do it right here above this title. So I'll get a few lines there. And we can load this by opening up a link tag here. And within Sublime Text, this auto completes for me. But basically, we're saying that we want a link that is a style sheet with a type that is CSS. And then the href is going to be where this CSS file is located. So to load a static file in Django, we can open up a code block. So again, curly braces, percent signs. And now we can say static and then quotes. And within those quotes, I'll say that that is within blog and then main.css. So I'll save that. So what this static statement does here is it generates an absolute URL of the static files and then accesses that blog main CSS. Now at this point, we should be pretty close to being done. If we reload our page in the browser, first let me make sure that we don't have any errors in our dev server, and we don't, so that's good. So now let me reload our home page in the browser. So I will reload this. Okay, so that's not really what I was expecting there. Let's try to restart our web server since we haven't restarted that in a while. So I'm going to kill that and clear the page. And then let's rerun Python manage.py, run server again. And now let's try to reload this page. Okay, so we can see that that looks a lot nicer. Sometimes in order to get it to load that stuff up, you just have to kill the web server and then reload. Sometimes you also have to reset your browser cache to get CSS changes and stuff like that. Now, if you ever want to do a hard refresh on your page and clear the cache, then on Mac, that is Command-Shift-R. And on Windows, I believe that is Control-F5. Okay, so this looks nice with the CSS snippets that we've added in, but there are a few more touches that I'd like to add. So it would be nice to visually split up our blog posts here a bit, and the CSS that we already added has some styles for that. We just need to put in the correct HTML. So again, within the snippets folder, let me open up our Sublime here. And now within the snippets, I have a file called article.html. So let me open that in Sublime. And now let me copy all of this. And this is going to be the HTML and CSS for a specific blog. So I'm going to put this within our for loop for our blog post, which currently is in the home template. So we want to open up our home template. And within the for loop, let's get rid of the current HTML that we have there now, just with that H1 and 2 paragraph tags. And instead, let's paste in that snippet from the snippets folder, and I'll correct that indentation. So now we have some more modern HTML5 HTML within here, and you can see that we have a lot more CSS classes to make this stuff look a little nicer. And we have the post author, the date posted, the post title, and the post content. So all of that information should still be there. So now let's go back to our browser and reload this. Then we can see that now this is all coming together and looking a lot nicer. And if we go back to our About page, then we can see that our About page is working with all of these new styles also. Now, our other links in our navigation bar don't work just yet because we haven't yet created these pages, but we'll be creating these in future videos. Now, there is one last little change that I want to show you that will make our templates better and more flexible. So if we pull up our base HTML template right now, so let me go to that base HTML template. If we go to our navigation bar, so that's in the opening body tag in this header tag here. So this is the navigation bar for our website here, from this opening nav tag all the way down to this closing nav tag. Now we can see that we have some links here in our navigation bar. So we have an href here for the Django blog that goes to our homepage. We have a home link that goes to our homepage, about that goes to /about, and login and register are just these hashtags here or pound signs, which just means that they're dead links. So right now, this home link and this about link are hard-coded to these locations. Now, we saw in the last video how easy it is for us to change the routes to these pages. Maybe in the future, I will want our blog homepage to be at /blog instead of the root of our website. So if we were to hard code the routes here in our templates, then anytime we wanted to change those routes, then we would also have to change the hrefs here in our templates. Now, anytime you have to change things in multiple locations like that, then it should be firing off some alarm bells in your head that there's probably a better way to do this. And in this case, we can use the Django URL tag in order to get the absolute path to a given URL pattern. So let me show you what I mean here. So for our blog homepage, within the href attribute, we can come in here and open up a code block. So that's going to be the curly braces with the % signs. And now we will say URL and then some quotes there, and then pass in blog-home. And that blog-home will be the name that we gave to our URL pattern. So if we go back to our blog URLs, so let me open these up here, then this blog-home is the name for our home URL pattern. So that's why it's important that these names are unique, because anytime we reference that, it will reference this home path that goes to this home view. So anytime we reference a URL in a template, it's probably best to use the URL tag and then the name of the route instead of actually hard coding those in like this, because if those URLs change, then this URL tag will change with them. But if they're hard coded, then it means we have to change it in multiple locations. So the links here that are hard coded in the navigation bar, I'm going to change all of these to use this URL tag. So this will be blog-about, and then we have one more up here that goes to our home route as well. So I'll paste that in. So now if we click on Django blog, it goes to our blog home. If we click on home, it goes to blog home, and about goes to blog about. And again, those are the names that we gave to our URL patterns here. Now again, if I go back to my base template, this login and this register route here, we haven't created those routes yet. So we can't use the URL tag with those yet, because if we try to use the URL tag with a URL that doesn't exist, then we'll receive an error. So when we create those login and register routes in a future video, then we'll be sure to update these in the navigation bar as well. But with the URL tags in place for our home and our about routes, we should be able to reload our website and those should still work. So let's reload our website. So I'll reload the home page here. So now if we click around here in the navigation bar, then all of these should still work. So yep, that still links to the about page, and these two still link to the home page. So that's good. So even if those routes are changed in the future, our navigation should work no matter what, no matter where those routes are, because that URL tag will always get that location correct. So we should use that URL tag anytime we can to keep our code easy to maintain. Okay, so I think that is going to do it for this video. I hope that now you have a good understanding of templates and how we can pass data into those templates, and also the benefits of creating parent templates so that we can update every page on our site in a single location. In the next video, we'll be learning how to log into our admin page that we saw earlier in the series. And the admin page is a great way to see some backend data and also where we can make changes in a nice, easy to use GUI. But if anyone has any questions about what we covered in this video, then feel free to ask in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer those. And if you enjoy these tutorials and would like to support them, then there are several ways you can do that. The easiest way is to simply like the video and give it a thumbs up. And also, it's a huge help to share these videos with anyone who you think would find them useful. And if you have the means, you can contribute through Patreon, and there's a link to that page in the description section below. Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and thank you all for watching.